So my field of environmental studies and even the field of environmental justice, these are interdisciplinary fields. So it means that students enter the classroom, I enter the classroom as a faculty without an assumed set of prior knowledge. And what it means is that our students and we as instructors are drawing from multiple different disciplines to understand these, what a lot of folks, including scholars Riddle and Weber, call wicked problems, right? These intractable, messy, complex socio-ecological systems problems. And so what that means is that I, as an individual, can't be a subject matter expert in most of what I teach. And I don't find that disconcerting, right? So I am not a subject matter expert in much of what I teach. But what I am an expert at is this process of interpretation and translation and question ask. And so that's one of the ways that I model this humility and curiosity, is that I admit very openly that I don't have the sort of subject matter depth, right, that a faculty member, maybe in organic chemistry, I always pick on the organic chemists, but I so admire that kind of just laser focused depth, right? That's a different sort of set of knowledge and skills than someone who does interdisciplinary work offers. And so I'm open about that. I ask lots of questions of the students, and the students ask questions of me. And when they ask questions of me and I don't know the answers, I say, I don't know the answer. How can we figure this out? I also try to model curiosity and humility by co-learning with students, by designing projects and classroom exercises that, again, place me out of this role of subject matter expert, because that's a very uncomfortable role for me in most cases, and instead puts us all in this sort of co-investigator, co-explorer sort of mode. So that's been really fun to do this quarter. It doesn't always work out. I also try to draw from student expertise in the classrooms. Like, it makes me so happy when I have students who enter the class who are from departments outside of environmental studies, right? So when a scientist comes in, or I have a community health student right now, and so I tap their knowledge because they have all this recent, beautiful knowledge, subject area knowledge that can help us understand these complex socio-ecological systems. So one of the challenges in working across disciplines in an interdisciplinary space, in a problem-oriented, relevant, interdisciplinary space, is that there are lots of value-laden claims out there, right? And so one of our jobs and our tasks as scholars and learners is to navigate all of these competing facts and claims about environmental issues in particular. And, you know, there's like a slippery slope here, because I want students to acknowledge that there can be competing visions about how the world works, and that's okay. But also, we live in this really complicated political environment, this sort of post-truth era, right? So there's a fine line, I think, between acknowledging various ways of knowing and various ways of understanding the world versus negating really fundamental facts about how the world works, right? So as best as I can, I ask students to look at texts. So we really engage deeply with texts of all kinds. So when we learn about the early environmental movement and some of the early environmental heroes' connections to the field of eugenics, for example, I try to bring the really brutal original texts that were written by a lot of these folks, and we look at them and we make sense of them, and try to analyze them in light of the context of the environmental movement at that time. And what is so frustrating to students is that they've now, many of them, read 4 or 5 different historians' account of the same man, right, drawing from the same source documents, and those handful of historians come to very different conclusions, right? And so we've been looking at that and talking about that and talking about how frustrating that is, that the same set of information could be interpreted different ways. So I think that's a sort of painful process, but it's also important to see to acknowledge and to see how it plays out in reality. And so I don't have answers for them, right? But they can start to ask the questions, well, what's informing the perspective that this particular scholar is taking? And so again, this is another example of humility, right? These are the experts in the field and they disagree. So why is that? Can we contextualize that in this sort of cultural moment? Can we contextualize that and in the kinds of questions that these researchers are asking? And so that's been a really relevant and meaningful example for students of how to navigate these competing claims.